the senior senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call in progress be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, and I ask unanimous consent I be recognized for such time as I may consume.
Without objection.
Thank you very much. You know, this is going to be kind of a strange statement to make. I have a great regret that I'm going to have to vote for this bill when it comes up. And I'm talking about the spending bill, and I don't like it. You know, I went through a lot of years as being, in fact, since I've been here, probably I've been ranked with the 3 most conservative members every year, more times than anybody else has. And I'm looking at this right now, and I was listening to some of my colleagues that are concerned with the spending, and no one is more concerned than I am about the spending. We got a problem, though, that nobody, really, a lot of people don't understand. I've been on the Senate Armed Services Committee for, well, actually 24 years in the Senate, and I was on the same committee in the House before that. And I've never seen anything like this. We went through things back in the Carter administration where we had a hollow force. And then Ronald Reagan came along in 1980, and we rebuilt our military. Everybody knows that. They knew what was happening. A hollow force is not good. A hollow force means you can't fight. You can't really fight a war. Certainly we can't do 2 contingencies simultaneously, as has been our policy for a long period of time. And that's what we got into back then. Now, this hasn't happened since then, since 1980. But I chair one of the subcommittees. We had the vices in. This is at the end of the Obama administration. It was still the Obama administration. And the vices, that's the 4 vices of the services that we have. They all said the same thing. We are in a position now where we have a hollow force like we had back in the late 70s. And it's something that the public doesn't know this. We don't have it. Our press doesn't talk very much about this. They talk about all the problems that ring the bells and sell the newspapers and all of that, but they don't want to talk about the military. And this is a reality of what we're faced with right now. I've got quotes. General Dunford is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He said, we are losing, this is a quote, we are losing our qualitative and quantitative edge in America. That means we have 2 great forces out there, one Russia and one China, and they are passing us up. You know, right now we have, in both China and Russia, in their artillery pieces that they have on tanks, Mr. President, they can fire 8 rounds a minute. You know how many rounds we can fire with ours? 4 rounds a minute. We got ourselves in a position where we had our ground brigades of the United States Army. This is at the end of the last administration. Of our ground brigades, only 30% of them could be deployed. Now, I don't like to sound like I'm being partisan when I talk about Barack Obama. I respect him in one area, and that is he was admittedly a very proud liberal. And proud liberals don't care that much about a defense system. They think that, you know, if all countries will stand in a circle and hold hands and unilaterally disarm, all threats will go away. And so we went through that. And people didn't seem to care. There's this myth out there that somehow we're stronger than anybody else. The equipment we have is better than anybody else. During that same time frame, in our air brigades, only 30% of those would work. And the Marines who use the F-18, of the F-18, 62% of the F-18s couldn't fly. Because one of the things you're doing when the military goes down, the first thing that goes down is maintenance, and then of course you have modernization, and that's where we got way down behind. So, you know, don't take my word for it. And unfortunately, right now we have 27 members of the Senate Armed Services Committee. They understand this. They know where we are in this, but a lot of the other people don't. They have other interests. If they had a strong interest, they'd probably be on the committee, and they're not. But look at Secretary Mattis. Our competitive edge has eroded in every domain of warfare, air, land, sea, space, cyberspace, and is continually eroding. America has no preordained right to victory in the battlefield. That's Secretary Mattis. He's the Secretary of Defense. Army General Allen said, we've had most of our modernization programs on life support for the last several years. Currently, our modernization is 50% of what it was in 2009. Oh, this is a good one, too. The Navy Admiral Moran, he said, so this is not just me saying this is where I got the information. He says for our entire Hornet fleet, a Hornet's an F-18, for our entire Hornet fleet, we have 62% that are not flyable, more than half. We are double where we should be in non-flyable aircraft. General Walters, I can tell you today we cannot fight two conflicts simultaneously. See, that's supposed to be our policy, a minimum, ever since World War II, that we'd be able to and have the capability of fighting on two fronts simultaneously. We can't do it. General Wilson, 50% of readiness today across the Air Force. We're the smallest Air Force ever in 2016 when we bottomed out at 310,000. And, you know, I could go on and spend a lot of time talking about this, but I can't find anyone in the military who disagrees. That should be a foregone conclusion. If our own military, they're the ones that are responsible for protecting my 20 kids and grandkids from enemies. And I just got back from the South China Sea, and we have a lot of really good allies there. We've had the Philippines, we had the South Korea, Guam, Japan, Taiwan, and they've always been our top allies there. But you know what's happening, Mr. President, in the South China Sea? You've got China out there doing something totally illegally. They say they're reclaiming land. They're not reclaiming because they don't have it to start with, but they're creating land that's out there in the seaways that we need to defend America and for our commerce, to keep our commerce going. And they are building islands. They right now are up to over 3,000 acres of islands. This is China we're talking about. What are they doing on this? They have runways, they have rockets, they have military equipment. There's nothing on there except military equipment. It's almost as if they're preparing for World War III. And so where are our allies now? We talked to our allies. They're embarrassed because they're not sure whose side they want to be on. In fact, it's almost as if they put this in on purpose, where you have the Secretary of Defense or the Minister of Defense in whichever of these countries I mentioned, on one side saying, well, you know, the threat's not all that great, and the other one saying, yeah, you got to do something because the world's coming to an end. Well, they're all taking both sides of this issue. It's fascinating. It's almost like they got together and they're doing it by design. Has this ever happened since World War II in our country? No, it hasn't. And that's where we are right now. So we have the problems that are facing our military, and that they're very real, and it's something that's got to be fixed. Now, this bill corrects a lot of these things. We have the defense now up to $700 billion. The last request that came from President Obama was I'm going from memory here, but it's, I think, $548 billion. This is $700 billion. We're rebuilding. We're trying to address the threats of both Russia and China. And by the way, I want to mention there is one other threat in that same area where we were, and that comes from North Korea. You know, I'm sure that everybody knows who Kim Jong-un is. He's the head guy at North Korea. And something happened on November 28th. On November 28th, he fired a rocket that had the range that would reach the United States of America, reach certainly here where we are today. Now, some people say that can't be true, and all they can say are they reach down into two areas of disagreement. Say, well, now he has the range to reach us, but he couldn't carry a payload. We don't have any idea what payload was on this rocket that he sent. Let's assume there's no payload at all. That'd be a matter of days before they'd be able to make that up. Then they say he couldn't re-enter. Re-entry is always the problem that you have, because to re-enter, you've got to come in and have some level of accuracy to come in. And so you can't re-enter with, they're saying, with accuracy. Well, what difference does it make if they have a weapon that'll take out a city the size of St. Louis, it doesn't really matter where it lands. And so that's a hollow argument. So the power there is right. Now, I have to compliment our president, because I hesitate doing it this way because a lot of people don't understand. Remember when Kim Jong-un made the statement, he said, aha, November 28th, I've shown that I can reach the United States of America, and therefore, I have a button, I can press it, and I can take out an American city, words to that effect. Now, instead of just a policy of appeasement that we had for 8 years prior to this president coming in, this president said, yeah, and I got a button, it's bigger than yours, ours works, yours doesn't, and we'll blow you off the face of this earth. Now, it doesn't sound very diplomatic, does it? It's not. That's what's good about this president. He's not afraid to stand up and be strong again. The policy of appeasement hasn't worked. It's never worked throughout time. And so what happened, hours after he made that statement to Kim Jong-un, he called South Korea and said, we've changed our mind. We're going to send some people down to the Winter Olympics. Wow, that's a major change. And I can remember saying that in one of our committee hearings. And even our own intelligence committee said, well, he didn't really mean it. It was just a matter of days after that he called up and said, we want to negotiate, sit down, talk to President Trump. We want to, and we'll even put things on the table like denuclearizing, and this is going to happen. So, that's another threat, but what I'm trying to get across is those threats are there. That's something, in my opinion, is actually working. And but anyway, in this bill, we have the $700 billion. We have the $61 billion over the enacted levels of fiscal year 17. We have a 2.4% pay raise for our kids out there. We have 11.5 for missile defense. One of the areas where I was most critical of the last budget that was put together by President Obama was missile defense. If there's ever any time in the history of this country we've got to have missile defense, that's it. I mean, they're out there right now. They've got the capability. They have missiles that'll reach us. We need missile defense. We have ground-based interceptors. I was up in Alaska the other day. They now have 44 ground-based interceptors up there. And what's really interesting about that is we had 44, and then the last president came in. He knocked that down to 32, I think it was. And then as soon as we looked at it and came in, we went back to 44. And now we're looking at 20 more. Now, is that going to give us the redundancy to protect my 20 kids and grandkids of something coming in? It is a lot better than it was, and we're getting all kinds of new equipment in order to try to knock down. And the big mistake we made in this country was when we were planning to put ground-based interceptors in Poland and the Czech Republic and a radar there that would protect the eastern half of the United States and Western Europe. And that was already started when Obama came in office. His first year, he pulled that program down. One of the persons that I've always liked over there is Václav Klaus. He was the president, and I can remember so well. I was over there, and we said, we have to have your cooperation in the Czech Republic to protect America. He said, are you sure if I do this and I outrage Russia, they're going to be angry and take every step against us they can, that you won't pull the rug out from under us? Yeah, I said, absolutely, we're not going to pull the rug out from under us. And that's the first thing Obama did when he got in office. But anyway, that's the problem we should have had. The threat is there. We're trying to meet the threat. This bill meets that threat. It gets us back into the amount of money that should have been left in missile defense. It's in there right now. We have another $11.5 billion for missile defense, and it's a 44% increase over 2017. The O&M budget right now is the increase there, where the total budget is going to be $238 billion. That's to offset the losses on maintenance and O&M, the budget that has created the problem that we have today. And of course, this budget that we're going to be voting on, this is the big budget we're talking about. We're getting criticized. Those of us are going to be voting for it. And, I'd say this, the liberals all like it. They like to spend money. Conservatives don't. I don't like to do it. But that's what is all in this bill. 57,100 troops over Obama's 2017 cut. And another thing is we're not going to have a background. So anyway, this is why we absolutely have to do this. I look and I see that it'd be nice if we had just the comfort of believing that America is still the strongest out there and that we have all everything that we need, and we don't. So let's look at what we're going to be doing. The Army, from the high point of 566 soldiers during the surge in 2007, Obama reduced to just 460,000. The brigade combat teams, 33% of them didn't work. The aviation combat teams, they didn't work. And we're on our road to recovery on this because we did a supplemental. We all remember that. But it's this budget that's going to bring us back, that we will end up having our military in the position that American people think it's in right now. I was on a TV show just a few minutes ago, and they said, well, you know, with all this debt that's coming with this thing, and you're talking about the military, isn't that a good trade-off? And I said, no, you can't trade off something when you see the threat that's out there that's unprecedented in the history of this country, and you have 20 kids and grandkids. No, that's not a good trade-off. I'm hoping that those individuals who are conservatives, and I can't imagine that anyone on the Senate Armed Services Committee who deals with these issues on a daily basis won't want to get in there and let's make America strong again. We can do it, but if we don't vote for this, it's not going to be done. That's my great fear that I have. So I would hope that the conservatives out there, I know a lot of us that, the ratings always take place. You cast a vote and they say, oh, that's spending a lot of money. We're going to rate against you. But it's, again, if the trade-off is defending America, that's the one thing we should be doing. Boy, I'd give anything if we could just pull that element, all of that we're doing for the military, out of this budget and do that individually. And let me stand up here and read the Riot Act about what's happening to this country, the debt that's accumulating. But unfortunately, we don't have that option today. We got one vote we can do, and that's going to be the vote that we're going to do, hopefully tonight. I'm not sure when it's going to be. So I just ask my colleagues to understand the threat that faces our country, the greatest threat, in my opinion, that we've ever had. With that, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.